Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of our Tuesday Live with your host, Jen Delafave.
And I'm Joe Delafave.
And today we're super pumped because we have two extraordinary ladies leading the way here in real estate investing. And I am so proud of both of them, all of their accomplishments, and honestly just being true leaders in this industry. So Grace and Amelia, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. We are excited to be here too.
Well, we got some fun things we're going to talk about today. One of them being you guys, right? And that's always a fun time. And I think the other two is just going to be talking about like your journey and things like that.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So with that, it's live right now.
Yeah, our internet is just being funky today. So.
Oh, no worries.
It happens.
Hey now. Well, that's what we're going to get to chat about today is you two and all the cool stuff that you're doing. Oh, it's working, so we're on.
All right, yeah.
So first of all, Grace, Amelia, I want you to introduce yourself and tell everybody who's tuning in a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. I'm going to go first. I am Amelia McGee. I live and invest in Des Moines, Iowa. I've been investing for about 5 years now, and I primarily buy and hold long-term rentals. I have a few midterm rentals in there and some short-term rentals as well, but pretty boring investing, I would say, although it's a great way to build that passive income and wealth for the future.
Well, and that's what it's about too. You know, everybody's like, oh, you guys are be making millions right away in real estate. It's like get rich quick overnight, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's usually not the case.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the point too. It does take time, but you know, over time, boy, it really compounds.
It really does. And they're so real about it. I gotta say, like, that's like the most cool thing I think is like you've created such a community of people can just be open and honest of where they're at in their journey, and you accept everyone. So whether you have, you know, syndications and multifamilies, or you're just a newbie starting out, you literally cater to everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Grace, how much? I know, you know, people know you both, but you want to give a little shout out to who you are and where you're from and all that good stuff too?
Yes, I'm Grace Gudenkauf. I was born, raised, and invested in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but I currently live in Tucson, Arizona, so I'm an out-of-state investor. I do primarily single-family rentals and flips. I have a small team in Iowa, and we've been focusing a lot on flipping lately, but I have about 25 doors and have a goal to add about 10 more this year.
Wow, look at you.
Now, those are all in Iowa?
All in Iowa within a 15-minute radius.
That's so awesome. And how much do you spend in marketing for these properties?
None. Zero.
I've never spent a dime on marketing.
I spent $35 once and it didn't work, and I was like, never mind.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that again.
I love that. Okay, so let's dial back a little bit. As obviously you guys have been doing this for a little while now. Can you think of like the very first property, Amelia, that you were going to purchase? Like what was going through your head when you were, you know, getting ready to sign on the dotted line there?
I was absolutely scared. Hoopless. I'll edit myself. I didn't really know anything about real estate at the time. I mean, I had read the books and watched some YouTube videos. I feel like I knew enough to be dangerous, but I think that's also a benefit because there's so many people that feel like they need to know every little detail before they move forward. And in real estate investing, you're just not going to know it all. Honestly, probably even you guys who've been in the business for a long time, longer than I have, like you're probably still learning new things every single day. Yeah. It's just like getting that momentum going and then continuing to capitalize on that. But yeah, the first deal, super scared, never self-managed before, never, you know, I didn't even know how to really buy a property, like the process of like going through escrow. I was brand new to that as well, but you know, just don't be afraid to ask questions and get the ball rolling.
So why real estate of all things, right?
Great question. I think I first started out just having a really strong personal finance background. You know, I wanted to pay my student loans off really fast after college. And I think there's a lot of overlap within the personal finance and real estate investment community and like the F5 movement, like financial independence. So at some point when I was paying off my student loans, was watching HGTV, stumbled across like Bigger Pockets and real estate investing and thought like, oh, this is a way that I can make some side hustle income in addition to my W-2 job and earn more passive income where I'm not exchanging hours for money every single month.
Mm-hmm.
What was your day job?
Project management for a magazine company. Yeah,
A little different.
not super exciting, but I mean, it's just means to an end for me. I knew
Yeah, paid the bills.
it paid the bills. I always
Yeah.
knew I was going to be self-employed, so it was just something to like get me by in the meantime.
Well, and I feel like you got to set that plateau. Like you start here, right? And then you level up and then you level up and you keep going. So I know it sounds great to go from rookie to rock star. And it would be great to do that overnight because then all of us would drive like Ferraris and have private jets and all that. But that's not how it goes. You know, you got to start somewhere and it's just one small step at a time. And then
Yep.
Grace, what was your why for real estate? Like so many people like, you know, I could get into this or that. Like what made you pick real estate of all things?
I think Amelia says she always knew she'd have her own business, and I definitely felt that too. And so when real estate came across my radar, I was like, oh, this is like the chance to like do something nobody else does and to live a life that nobody else does. And after that first project, I was like, I can do this. If all these other people are doing this, I can do this. And I think I've always been creative in that I love making things. I love working on businesses. I love seeing what I can make out of nothing. I can't sing, can't dance, can't draw, but I'm creative in a business sense. And
Hey,
so
I've seen your reels. You can dance.
Yeah, you girls can definitely get down.
Jen can dance better than I can. But yeah, it's just been a really great creative outlet. Plus you're building wealth and, you know, in control of your own life.
Yeah, and you taught us that because when you went to Mexico for a little bit there and were working remotely, even without a laptop for a hot minute,
Yeah.
you know, you still like the show went on, you survived, you made things happen and then some. And so we looked at each other, we didn't go to Mexico, but we could go to Florida. You know, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of funny full circle how you even inspired us in a way to get out of our comfort zone. Like we lived in Rochester most of our lives. And now we left there, obviously, but you never know until you just go.
Well, and I think it was that 1 month she went to Mexico and was like, I'm still going to do my business, but I'm going to be in another country for a month. And then you went like to the Mediterranean and lived on a boat with your boyfriend for a few weeks. And I'm like, my gosh, honey, like we got to travel more ourselves. And like, look at Grace. Like I always say, you know, you've got to figure it out at a young age. That's amazing.
It is cool. But there were sacrifices along the way too. I remember the van that you would drive for a little bit.
Yeah.
And
You still have that van?
I still have that van. When I come home to Iowa, it's the extra vehicle, and I literally get humbled straight back to my roots, and I have to drive it. I got lucky this week. I'm in Iowa right now, and I didn't have to drive it. But yeah, there was a van I drove that had like 250,000 miles on it. It had all the seats ripped out. It was like a work truck, and I drove that so I could buy a duplex. And I lived in a really old house with two roommates so that I could buy this house, and I just kept living like a broke college student for 3 years after I graduated so that I could invest that money into my own business and take those risks.
mm-hmm.
Well, and I got to say too, like I remember countless times where like we would be on one of our support calls and you'd be like covered in paint or you'd be like doing things at one of your houses. So like you were actually laying down the work yourself.
Yeah.
Like you guys were
early morning. Your call was at like 9 a.m. Eastern. So that was definitely early for you.
Yeah.
I remember I used to go to work out at 5 at the Y downtown. And then after I would work like 2 hours at the rental property, our first project ever. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was usually pulling nails or painting. Then I'd come back, have that call, and then full day work.
Wow. It definitely paid off for sure. Or is paying off.
Well, and that's the whole point. I think, you know, a lot of times people are like, I'm too busy. I don't have any free time.
Yeah. Do you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How did you both work around that? You were both really, really busy. You both had jobs, careers, families, right? So how did you, because I would think out of all of the things I hear from potential people who are wanting to get into real estate, like I just don't have any time. I'm too busy because like everybody believes they're too busy. if you just threw your phone out the window and got rid of your laptop, you'd realize you probably got like 4 hours a day back from just not scrolling. But what was your experience like?
I think you truly have to have the desire to want more for your life and be willing to make those sacrifices. I think it literally all comes back to like the desire of it. And you know, you almost have to be obsessed with your business for a little while. You will have to spend a lot of time on your business when you're first starting out if you want it to be successful for many years to come. And like we mentioned very briefly at the very beginning of the show, like everyone thinks it's a get rich quick scheme because that's what's sexy and that's what looks good on social media. But that's just what you're seeing for 30 seconds on these reels and these stories. There's so much more that goes on beyond, like, behind the scenes. And I think that people that see that and think I'm going to do that and get rich quick, like, they've realized how hard it is and they just don't want it enough to actually pursue it.
Bam.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, you know, most of those Lambos are rented anyways, right? So they want to make that 30-second reel.
Exactly.
Or it's somebody else's. They're walking through the parking lot. Like, look at my car.
But it doesn't mean that it's not crazy powerful. Like Amelia, an example for you is you've been doing it for 5 years and you've made good money and good investments and good wealth, but you're about to have your first like big payday off of an 11 unit that took you 3 years to stabilize. So while it took 5 years, you still made great money and did great things, but it's not like you got that huge payday in year one.
Right. Right. And a huge payday for me is going to be $200,000. That's great. But that $200,000 is going to go really quick when we'll pay taxes on it, put some aside for savings, invest some, reinvest the rest. Like, it's like, I don't know. You're always reinvesting for like probably the first 10, 15 years. You're not even realizing that those profits.
Well, and that's part of it too, right? Like you make money and you don't want to go blow all of it. You get a big check. And it's so easy to want to go get the clothes and the new car and do whatever, but it's actually having some strength, right? To reinvest that money and you not work for the money anymore, but let your money work for you.
Mhm.
And that's really the key. And I think, you guys are seeing the fruits of that now happening. And it's really exciting and it builds momentum and momentum builds more momentum, right? So you keep on reinvesting it, you keep on growing. And that's really the key. And living the lifestyle that you're able to do by not having to work for a boss, you're your own boss, which is great. And it's also tough at times too.
She's
right?
now her dad's boss too.
Uh-oh.
Huh? Did
I
he
know.
have a hire?
That's so funny. I always laugh at that. When I come home, he's like, "What's up, boss?"
Ah,
That is so awesome. Like you just never know. Like again, whose lives you're really going to change. So social media, obviously we love it. That's how we all connected. And that's how you two got connected. Was it through like a random post? Like how did you exactly meet?
I don't know how I found Amelia, but I remember I started talking about real estate on Instagram pretty early on, just because I wanted to see who else was doing it and make friends with them. And I'd always search for people around me doing it, couldn't find anyone. Then one day, I feel like somebody sent me her profile and was like, "This girl's also in Iowa." And I was like, "No way. There's no way there's another cool young girl also doing this. We have to be friends." So I slid into her DMs. I'm like, "Hey, I'm Grace. Like, we have to be best friends. We both do this." We hit it off from there. We started doing our free monthly WIIRE meetup. Did that for a whole year, but after the very first one, like 30 people showed up and we were like, "What the heck? Like this is crazy. Can't believe that other people want to come and chat and do the same thing as we want to do." And obviously, long story short, that's what made WIIRE, but it really was a genuine, I want to meet people who are doing what I'm doing.
Well, I think that what you've done a great job of it again is like making it real. Like there's a ton of masterminds, mentorships, communities, like things, retreats that you can join and go to. But you two have like really dialed into what the ladies need and what we want. I mean, like I said, from experienced investors to, people that are really looking to get into it. Like, how did you really tap into that? Like, what was the secret sauce there?
Oh, I don't know if there was necessarily. I think we just like being authentic like our authentic, gosh, that's a tongue twister.
Good
Lord.
Words are hard.
Our authentic selves, and that's just who we've always been on Instagram. And I've been thinking about this a lot recently because you could spend hours on a post on Instagram trying to make it perfect, trying to get the graphic right, and you post it and you get 10 likes and 2 comments, and you're like, wow, what a waste of time. Right. Or you can post this authentic post that took you 30 seconds and you're like, man, I look like trash here and this probably isn't going to perform well. And then that like skyrockets. It's just like, why are we spending so much time trying to be perfect when that's not even what people want to see? Like I've just noticed that more and more, and recently just started to like really think about it. And I'm like, people they're so sick, I think, of seeing fakeness that they're really attracted to the realness.
I think we had the audacity to give ourselves permission to be authentic from the very beginning. And so specifically at the retreats, we started by giving everybody else the permission to be vulnerable and authentic. And I think that just really sets the stage to have such a good time, because your walls are down, your guards are down, like you're just having fun, you're being real, you're connecting, and we're laughing and having a good time.
That's for sure. I can attest to that.
I need to get a wig so I could sneak into one of these events. You guys
I
are
know,
having.
Joe's been wanting to come to one for years.
Oh my
One
God.
day we'll
Well,
sneak it in.
Jen comes back bragging like what a great time it is, and I know she's looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, so I went to the one in Orlando. That was 2022, and it was the first time like I did something for me, real estate related, not Joe. And I was nervous. Like I almost didn't want to go. Like, can I really leave the kids? Like I was kind of in a weird headspot. And I really, like, it sounds cheesy, but I feel like that retreat saved me in a way, because like I came back a new person. Like I came back like a stronger mom, like definitely a better businesswoman, like ready to take on the world and not feeling alone. Because I feel like it's definitely a male dominated society for sure when it comes to real estate investing. It's like a lot of guys. So being in a group of girls that like, I mean, my favorite parts were coffee in the morning, having breakfast, or a couple cocktails around the pool at night. Yeah. And it was just, in the in-betweens were great too, the hot seats and all of it. But if you really structured it, like you said from the beginning, let the guards down and like, just be real. Like, what are you here to get? And what can you give? And be sure that you really just be true to yourself.
We have a lot of fun, but we also learn a lot too.
And you don't let us go hungry, which to me is so important.
No, and we've even upped our food game so much since that retreat that you came to. So Salt Lake City. Oh, I just can't wait. It's going to be so fun. The food's going to be good. The mansion that we're staying in is unreal. Like I've never been in such a nice place. So I can't wait.
Well, if you have a 6'2", women show up long hair.
Nope. You got to watch the kids. Are there still seats available for that, or did you guys sell out?
We have a few left.
Okay, so yeah,
if not for 6'2", long blonde wigs, fat hat,
literally no
Rochester
boys allowed. But certainly, let us know where can somebody find that out if they were like, oh my gosh, I am a girl and I do want to come hang out. Where do we reach out to?
Yeah, you can look on our website, womeninvestinrealestate.com/retreat. But if you want to talk to us specifically, which I would highly recommend and encourage, you can email us at hello@womeninvestinrealestate.com. I personally monitor that inbox, so I will personally see that and get back to you if you have any questions at all.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, because like I have a daughter, we both do, and she's 11. And I'm like, honey, like, I want you to be a young, powerful, successful, happy, like entrepreneur. If you want to go work for somebody, I'm not going to tell you no. But if you can start grasping some of this now, you'll never have to. And, and my son, he's 9 and he's all about it too. So maybe you should be bringing Brooke in a couple more years. She'll be there. Because I think it's great to be around other powerful women who are regular people, who've really just achieved some awesome stuff, and they put in the work. And I think that's what's, very commendable. Because I know before, when we very first got started our coaching, Grace was the first call of every single day. And the one thing I always found really powerful about Grace, she came in with a mission. She had questions because she did some stuff. So she had questions how that went. We went over that. We gave her like the next few steps what to do. She took great notes and then executed. And I am like, there is no doubt, like she's going to be super successful. Like you could tell in the beginning. So like, what are some of the key factors I would say both of you have that help you do that? Because I know there's so many distractions. Like I said earlier, we're all too busy. So like, what are some things, like if I'm a listener and I'm just getting started, like what are some big tips that you would do for a newbie getting into this?
I think one thing Amelia and I always preach is having a buy box will keep out the shiny object syndrome and keep you moving forward and not be in analysis paralysis if you do find a deal that you like. And I know so many people get so stuck on like what market, what strategy, whatever, but just focus on one thing and give it like 6 months. And I remember when I did your guys' program, I'm pretty sure I'd started in April and I didn't close on my first creative deal till October, but I closed 3 that month because it all went like boom, 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 boom. And so it doesn't take 2 weeks or even 2 months. It's going to take a little bit longer. But know that if you want to live a life that like nobody else lives, you're not going to get that in 2 weeks or 2 months. Like you have got to commit and work hard.
Mm-hmm.
Bam.
I would also say just a huge piece of advice is one, I think surround yourself with people that are doing what you want to do, but not people that are necessarily 1,000 steps ahead of where you are. I think it's really encouraging to see people who are only 5 steps ahead of where you want to be, because you can still, it's still fresh in their minds. You can ask them questions and it doesn't seem unattainable to you to get on that level. And I would also say just getting started. It's huge. Even if you buy your
Hardest
first
part.
deal that's just a base hit, it's just a solid, we're buying buy and hold rentals. It's a solid $250 a month cash flow, good appreciation area. You're not getting rich off of it, but you're learning so much. That is going to get that momentum started so you can continue to capitalize on it.
Well, and I think you just hit it on the head. You get around other people.
Mhm.
You build your village, your tribe, right? And I think that's important because like what Jen said earlier, she almost felt like alone, although I'm sitting next to her, but it was great to connect with other women who are doing it and build your tribe out that way too. So you can't do it all on your own. It does feel overwhelming when you're trying to do it all on your own. So to be around other people, to take advice and learn from their wins, but also learn from their losses. Like, hey, I really messed this up. I really goofed this up. I would never do that again. Right. So I think that's really important.
Or even like just sharing more. Like you just had a recent newsletter that went out and like you were like, I am pulling back the curtains. Like this is what just went down on this deal. And really just utilizing it as a learning lesson, I think is important, because not all deals are home runs or even wins. And, it's important that we talk about that more.
Yeah, that newsletter, we were just talking about it this morning, got the most responses we've ever gotten because people are really tired of hearing about all the shiny, fancy, amazing things that everybody does. And they want to see the real life ups and downs and losses and wins. And I think that Amelia and I, like, we always joke, we're just from small town Iowa. We're just some small town girls. Like, we'll be honest about it. Like, we're nothing crazy. And if we can do it, you can do it. But that also goes for those getting started. Help the next person up by being authentic and sharing how you're really feeling and what you're really going through.
Well, and I think that's key too, because on social media now, somebody will be like, oh, I was walking through the park today and I bent over to tie my shoes. I look up and I just bought a 5-unit apartment building. And I'm like, no, that's completely fake. Like that is all fake. That stuff is not true. And then I watched another one. The guy's like, I grew my portfolio by raising 30 million in private capital. And I'm like, okay, well, great. But like, what about like that newbie who's just getting started? That sounds like almost overwhelming, right? And it sounds scary, but you got to realize it's like plateaus, like we were talking about. You start somewhere and you just finally, you could get there. So your $250 deal, Amelia, it's a win, right? You have real estate, you're in the game, you're writing off depreciation. You get the benefits of appreciation. You're getting monthly cash flow. So rather you work or not, right? You still got that money coming in every month. Now get some more of those doors. That's the key. And it builds over time. So I think that's really the key, because I know so many people, they're like, I want to get rich in 10 minutes. And if I don't, this doesn't work. And I'm like, oh no, it works, right? You just got to put in the right steps. So I think that's really key.
And then also like watching your expenses. So I definitely want to chat a little bit. If you guys don't know, these two ladies wrote a book, Self-Managing Landlord. What?
Boom.
And when you
nails.
Love
those.
Oh, thank you. Self-managing means that you're keeping more money in your pocket. You're able to do things without having to pay it all out. So definitely pick it up if it's, you're getting your first rental. You don't have to line up a property manager right away. If you only have a few properties, let's dive into that a little bit. What prompted this book? How did the book writing process go? I'm so curious about that. And then just kind of touch on some of the topics in this book.
Yeah, so we, had been posting on Instagram for a while. We somehow got into the Bigger Pockets circle, and they approached us this last fall and were basically like, hey, we have this book idea that we think you two would be great for. Can we schedule a meeting to talk through what it's about? We're like so excited, like, ooh, what could it possibly be about? This is the biggest, opportunity I've ever had in my life. I don't know about Grace, but to write this book. And when they scheduled the meeting with us and we found out that the topic was how to self-manage rental properties, we were like, wow, that is maybe the most boring topic on planet Earth. But then as we got thinking about it, we were like, no, we can actually provide a lot of value here and really help new investors or, experienced investors that are like, man, I am just a shit show. I need to get it together here. Learn how to self-manage properly and get out of that mom and pop mindset. And it's crazy now when people email or DM, like people all over the place are reading this book. And it's just like, wow, I never ever thought that some random person would be learning from what I have to share. So it's just like a surreal experience.
Yeah, I think that we do a good job of people say either self-manage and it's crazy and you're stressed out, or hire it out and you pay a lot of money and they suck. And in our book, we're like, no, there's a third option. It's using systems and processes to be a self-manager, to eventually hire it in-house if you want to scale that much. And that's what Amelia and I have done. So we really offer this third path that not a lot of people talk about. And it's great because you can pick it up no matter where you're at in your investing career. But I think when it comes to writing it, it was so crazy writing it. It like never clicked that like people will read this who I don't know. I'm like, yeah, my mom will read it. My dad will read it. Like, no, like there's been thousands of copies sold, which is crazy. And Amelia and I wrote, we split up the chapters to write it. And so just like seeing the other person work, reading it over, going back and forth, like I could not imagine writing it by myself. It would have been so hard, but it was such a fun process.
What was your favorite part of that, do you think? Was it reading Amelia's part, or like actually sitting down and coming to fruition of like what you were able to do yourself?
When we got the covers, the different sample covers, that was when it was like, this is a book. Like this is gonna be a physical in somebody's hands. And that was so fun. I'll never forget that day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I gotta say, I love like the breakdown too, because you guys give like, I can see on the camera, but you have actual like apartment application samples, like you have little graphs and just all sorts of like detailed notes. I mean, master SOP, hello.
I know.
So it's not just like a read it, sit down and put it on your shelf. Like you're probably,
the handbook.
Exactly.
Well, you give them some resources to start putting into their business now, things that they can start processes. And really what it comes down to in any business is just having the right process. Right. Yep. And that is crucial. One of my favorite movies of all time is The Founder, about the story of McDonald's. And when they were inventing the process of that, that's what helped launch that business. So knowing the right process could really take a small little mom and pop thing to something much larger, and not feel like what you said earlier, Grace, is like you're all stressed out, a ball of, stress all the time. And don't get me wrong, guys, I'd love to say like there's nothing that ever happens. Like stuff happens, right? But it's important to like know how to deal with it.
Usually a process that follows it.
Yeah.
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 Well, another thing I want to say is not everybody wants to have 1,000 units and be on the Forbes Fortune 100. Like, I don't care about that. Neither does Amelia. So these principles of being systemized, knowing your why, being organized, they apply whether you have 1,000 units or one. And both people should focus on that because you want to live a life by your own design, whether you're working 80 hours a week because you love it, or you're working 8 hours a week because you don't care and you'd rather be doing other things. Both people need the systems.
Oof, I like the way you said that because like some people really enjoy the hustle, the grind, that I'm clocking in, I'm working overtime, and then I don't know, like you found a way to be able to like set your systems and like go. I forget where you were traveling all over. You're at Taylor Swift. You're over in Europe. And then you kind of came back. And I remember one of your Instagram stories, you were like, oh, I'm working on a Sunday, but I just took, however long off. So how did you switch that mindset and like almost give yourself permission? Like, this is how I'm going to live and I'm okay with it.
I mean, boundaries are so hard. That's something Amelia and I have worked on a lot over the last year. And I think there's phases of business and phases of life. When you are first getting started, you probably do have to be pretty scrappy and work on those Saturdays and those Sundays and those long nights. But as you start to catch the momentum that we talked about, you can start to take some of those things back and be like, I don't like one thing I did about 2 years ago is I don't have email notifications. That is a boundary. I will never turn them back on. I don't want them on. I don't want to be that person. And you can start to take little pieces back in your life and just make sure that you're intentional. Out of all the things that I am, the number one thing I want to be is intentional because you only got one life. So live it how you want to live it.
Yeah, I love that, Grace. How about you, Amelia? What would you say, like designing your life and where you're at?
I don't know how, because both of my parents worked, blue collar, white collar jobs, 40 hours a week. But I just always knew that wasn't for me. And I never had really anyone outside of my community to look up to, which is why I think it's so great with your kids. They're surrounded by so much business because they already have such a jump start in life. But I just think like you have permission. I'm giving you permission. You don't have to work 40 hours a week for the rest of your life. You can have the audacity to do something completely different. And just because society tells you you have to work 40 hours a week, like you don't. You can work 5 hours a week and make a great living. I don't even know what it is, but it's just like I've always been rebellious and I want to rebel against the norm. So I'm like, just because society tells you you have to do something, you don't have to do it. And that's just been my mindset.
Well, and I think you're spot on because, we're raised very similar to you, where my mom worked at Kodak her whole life. One job ever, worked at Kodak till she retired. And after that retirement, there's not some like fancy party or gold watch. Like they all high five, congratulations on your retirement. But it's a lot of time of working for somebody. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you truly love to do. But like with you, Amelia, like I was always the rebel too, where like I thought in 40 hours, that was like great because I was working like 50, 60 hours. And I was like, I miss my wife. It didn't really start clicking to me more until I met my wife. And I'm like, my gosh, I love hanging out with her. I hate not being with her. And then we have kids and it got even worse. Because now I'm going out the door and my kids are like trying to hug me and I'm driving to work and I miss them. And by the time I got home, they're already in bed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so I see my son and my daughter for 25 minutes in the morning. And it's usually a mad dash as I'm wolfing down breakfast and I'm getting run out the door. I was like, this is terrible. Like, I did not want that. And there's some people who are like, hey, cool. Like I had kids to drop off the babysitter and let that happen. But that was not me.
I think that's why we're so passionate. Like, gosh, if you can catch on earlier than we did, I mean, I'm grateful that we did when we did, but you learned this in your 20s.
I mean, not for nothing, girl. You were 26 when we were doing deals.
Right. Speaking of deals, I want to talk about current deals, like any good creative deals in the works or just great deals overall. Like what's going on over there in your portfolios?
I'm actually closing on a creative deal tomorrow.
Damn!
I forgot. That's funny.
I forgot. Creative? I love. I just have.
Amelia's like, wait, that rings a bell.
Yeah.
I literally was like, oh yeah, which is funny. It's just, yeah, and creative is not actually like my first choice. I mean, it is if I can get it, but it's just like no, I'm not actively pursuing it. But this actually came across the seller reached out to me because he knows that I buy in the area. He was selling a triplex. He probably reached out to me 6 months ago and wanted to sell it conventionally on a, he was just like, you'll buy it with a bank, take over, whatever. We couldn't agree on a price. And at this point, I don't need to buy okay deals. I'm looking to buy good deals. So I was like, I'm not interested at that I can't really make the numbers work. Would you be open to seller financing? He owns the property free and clear. He said no. I'm like, okay, like good luck. I hope you sell it, whatever. Meantime, he emails me a couple months later, multiple times, asking me questions. He's like, I'm having a hard time finding tenants. I'm getting older. I just really am done going through this. I'm like, well, I could take it off your hands if you want to sell or finance it to me, like I asked you about 6 months ago. And so he's like, yeah, I'm open to that now. So we worked out a deal. I'm buying it for $150. It's a triplex in Iowa.
Nice.
I'm putting $20,000 down. So like about 10,000 less than I would conventionally. And I'm making interest only payments for 3 years. And then I'm going to refinance it and pay them off in a balloon payment. But that makes it so it cash flows quite a bit better for those first 3 years, allows me to make some repairs, get tenants in, stabilize the property, and then hopefully refinance when rates are lower in the future. So that's what I currently have going on, which I'm closing on tomorrow, I guess.
Congratulations. Now, how
Thank
he
you.
knew you were because of like your social presence, or how did he know about you?
This is in a small town, so he just word of mouth knows that I buy properties and I'm a good landlord. That's the thing I
Small
think
town
people
gossip.
forget. Small town gossip, but like if you have a good reputation, this is actually a pretty nice property. He takes good care of it. I think he's got like a little emotional attachment to it and wants to make sure it's going to someone that is going to continue to take care of it. So, yeah, he found me. Again, spent $0 on marketing except for word of mouth here.
But you have great branding. You branded
Yeah.
yourself as the local. You branded yourself with a great reputation. You do
Yeah.
good quality work. You're helping people. So you're
Yeah.
building your brand. And I think that's really the key. And, Grace is another one who did that. It was kind of surprising because she'd put like, hey, I'm looking to buy a house on like Facebook. And people like, oh, yeah, you're Grace, of course. Right. And it was just like, it's the funniest thing. So like, guys, like don't slip on branding yourself. Large corporations do that. Why shouldn't you with your small
Right.
business?
As a small
Good point.
business, like what Amelia just said, people are emotionally attached. They want to know like a good person is going to take over
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know what happens with the big corporations always. Or you do.
Mhm.
Grace, are you working on any creative deals or any deals right now?
I have a fourplex I'm gonna buy on contract, and I just got off the phone with the seller, so hoping to close on that in mid-August.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, and that's the fun thing about it too. You move at your pace. And like what you said, Amelia, I loved it. I'm not just looking to get into a deal. I'm looking for like a good deal. Right.
Mhm.
And I could tell you with rates being high the way they are right now, property values are kind of up there. It's tough. It's really, really tough now to find some like really great deals. And I feel like that's why having the ability, one of the things in your tool belt is the ability to offer seller financing and get way better terms than what the lenders, the banks will charge you. And I think that's why I loved creative finance, because your task is to beat the banks, right? To do better than what you can get at a bank. And I think that's been the key. So that's super awesome.
Yeah, and anybody watching right now live, drop your questions. We can do a little Q&A while we have Amelia and Grace, because why not? They are fantastic. We've had a couple people just shouting you guys out. Great advice. So easy to get overwhelmed with all of the choices out there. And that is true. I think I love the concept of the buy box. I think it's almost, because people ask me like, what is your rent to own buy box? And I go, just a beautiful turnkey house, as long as it cash flows, like I'm down, no money down for it. But I don't really want it in certain states. So I think it is important, maybe sit down and write exactly what you're looking for. Because right now we've got one that doesn't cash flow, but it would be probably a great midterm rental over on the East Coast of Florida. And I'm like, it'll appreciate like, how hard is it to midterm? Maybe we should chat about midterm rentals real
Well,
quick.
and I think as we're finding a lot of these, and so I'm glad we're getting a chat about these. Jen brought it up, but there's
Yeah.
actually a couple we have right now in our system where beautiful houses, completely turnkey, like the one she's mentioning, they have a 3.25 interest rate. It's a 4-bedroom house, 2 bathrooms, 2,500 square feet, completely remodeled, just close to Melbourne in a city called Palm Bay. Their payment and it's close like I-95, close to the schools and all the stuff. Their payment all ends like $2,400 a month, but it only rents for maybe that. So there's no cash flow. So like other alternatives, right? And that low rate is so good. And the seller, they're just like, hey, listen,
Take my house.
take my house. You can have it. They just want $7,000 down and they're pay the closing costs. And they're like, go ahead and have it. So do you guys do some midterm rentals too?
No, just a few.
Well, I'm glad we could talk about that.
Yeah.
So what's that about?
We love a good midterm rental.
Like, how do you even get started in that?
Well, first, can we define what a midterm rental is?
Yeah, for our listeners.
Yes. A midterm rental is a furnished minimum of 30 days stay. Typically, you're targeting traveling nurses, digital nomads, pilots, construction workers, insurance claims where they need to be rehomed for a certain period of time. Typically, contracts are around 90 days, but the minimum is that 30-day threshold for it to really be considered a midterm rental.
So why would midterm rental, I think I know, but I want to ask for some of our friends who might not, but why would a midterm rental be better than like a long-term rental, Amelia or Grace?
We call midterm rentals the perfect happy medium between long-term and short-term. They are much less hands-on than short-term rentals. You're not dealing with constant turnover and the customer service that's involved with, hosting on Airbnb or Vrbo, but they're going to cash flow a lot higher than a long-term rental while still being fairly hands-off. A lot of our tenants, for me and Grace specifically, are traveling nurses, so they're kind of good professional tenants. They know the drill. They don't need a lot of hand holding. They're very, just there to eat, sleep, and go to work. So more cash flow, less work, essentially.
Well, and I love that too, because I was reading a story this morning. Somebody's all upset because they have a short-term rental in Florida, and a current guest was complaining that there's ants out in the yard and their dog gets bit by a fire ant, and now they want a refund for their whole stay.
I got bit by a fire ant last week.
So like, it's like that kind of stuff where, short term, there's a lot of customer service, like you're mentioning, Amelia, and this is what you're saying, not quite like that, right? You're working with professionals who are usually working and they just need a place to crash at night that's good, nice, safe, clean.
But like you have to furnish it like a short term. Like you've got the couches, the beds, the kitchen utensils, all the things.
We do, but not as much of a short term where you don't need all the bells and whistles and the luxury furniture. It's just really thinking about what if somebody needs to be comfortable and live there for 1, 2, 3, 4 months.
Definitely. And, you can do larger homes as midterm rentals, but if that's the case, you're typically going to be targeting those insurance claim stays because those are more likely families that have been displaced and are looking for somewhere to go because a hotel is not really a viable option for them. Whereas if you're just a single person, that's pretty easy to switch into a hotel. So it's a little bit of a trickier process. There's a little more groundwork that goes into it, but you can make a lot of money on those insurance claim contracts.
It's funny you say that. When we were doing a rent to own with one of our properties, the Conrad, somebody reached out for us, and it was just that, Amelia. There was somebody who, I don't know what happened, if their previous house caught on fire, or whatever it was, but they needed somewhere to stay for 6 to 9 months. And what they offered, so this is probably one of the other benefits of what they offered per month was significantly higher than what we were asking for long-term. I was like, whoa. So I thought that was kind of neat. And so this is where we kick back and forth that idea, because the house that we're talking about just so happens to be 2,500 square feet. So that's a, good sized house. that one traveling nurse, that's probably a big place for that one person, but like the family that you're mentioning or something like that, because we're in Florida, hurricanes, tornadoes, Florida things happen here all the time, floods. And so, maybe that's not a terrible option, because we're finding a lot of these creative finance deals now, and sellers are just, they're not selling. They're frustrated. They're starting to look for other avenues. And these are crystal clean, like beautiful houses in beautiful neighborhoods. And so, maybe that's a great strategy to talk about. So we have, go ahead, Grace.
I was just going to say a rule of thumb is the 25% rule, which is typically in your insurance, your home insurance on, I think it's coverage D. It says if you lose your house, we will pay rent around the value of 25% of your home. So if your home is worth $1 million, they'll pay $250,000 for you to rent in 1 year. So divide that by 12, $20,000, a little bit more than $20,000. That's how you can kind of work backwards into what would this rent for if there was an insurance claim. That's not true for every single policy, but that is a rule of thumb that you can use.
Good to know.
I might have to talk to that seller again.
Yeah.
We haven't cut the cord yet, but we're just
going to call him back real quick.
I'm going to be like, well,
I'm usually the one who's like, no more businesses, but I just always had this little itch for the MTR. Like, I have no desire to do a short-term rental, but it just seems like you said, professionals.
I think you'd make a really cute midterm rental, Jen. I can see it.
Well, and then this is kind of piggybacking on because I told Jen yesterday, but I talked to a seller who's moving to the Philippines, and he wants to sell a bank.
Yeah.
He owns a pre-existing bank. It's in an area where it's like all the towns in I think it's North Carolina are all like taking off around him. He's like, this is the last time. It hasn't yet, but they're building the biggest tree fort place like in the world, like right down the road from where the bank is. And this guy's living in it. He's got 25 parking spots. He's open to seller financing. He just wants 10 grand down so he could go to Thailand and get $1,000 a month. And I'm looking at the pictures of this thing, and I'm like, bud, like, don't you ever get worried about locking yourself in the vault? Like, this door is huge. And he's like, well, I know the combination. I just can't figure out how to work it. So if he's living in it, I'm like, well, can we turn this into like a short-term rental or rent out little sections of the bank and things like that and call it the bank or the vault?
Shiny object syndrome, right? Everything we're telling you guys listening not to do, like, this is why.
Here's Joe's real life stream of consciousness.
Yeah. Oh, I'm trying
Welcome to my world.
I'm trying my best to behave, but like, how many chances you get to buy a bank? I'm like, Bank of Delaware, like, here it comes.
Joe's like, I gotta check that one off my list.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, it's funny you could get creative with real estate, and you come into all types of situations. So, I know, Grace, you're working on a few other things too. Aren't you getting to like smaller homes and things like that? Container homes?
I was pursuing a property to build 2 container homes. It didn't work out, so I pivoted to building. Now I'm going to do new development. I literally have an in-person meeting after this podcast to kick that project off, but I absolutely will build those container homes in the future sometime.
They are so cool.
Yeah.
Once again, I try not to get shiny object syndrome, but I like watch all these like YouTube videos, and I'm watching these things done. I'm like, wow, they're small, but the way they do them, it's so slick.
It is really cool.
I just want to shout out Jeff. Thanks for being here. He found us through your podcast. I love hearing that.
Aw.
Thanks,
I love
Jeff.
that.
Yeah.
I love when we have the guys that listen to the podcast, even though it's called WIIRE, Women Invest in Real Estate. We still get our guy listeners, and I love hearing from them.
Right.
And Joe's been on Funny at Times.
Yeah. And I think we had our last meetup, a bunch of guys came in from Cape Coral and like, yeah, we heard you on the WIIRE podcast. I was like, really? That's so awesome.
Yes, you said that. I love that story.
Never, ever know who's listening. So keep doing what you are doing. And we got David here. He does have a question. Well, aside from grabbing your book, is there one piece of advice, number one piece of advice for someone self-managing a long-term rental? He just signed a lease. It will be his first personal rental. Congrats, David.
Ooh, that's amazing. Congrats. Yeah, I would say this $15 book, probably the best ROI you're ever going to get. But also, I would say make sure you're setting boundaries with your tenants, especially as a first-time landlord. And we were just on a call earlier on a different podcast And they were very blunt, and we got on this topic, and it's just like, if you don't have boundaries, your tenants will take advantage of you. They could, and they probably will. It's just it's a nature of the business. So I would just say, have business policies in place that you defer back to, and make them and make your lease the bad guy when any situations come up. And just, yeah, be firm on your policies.
Yeah.
Didn't you have a little situation not long ago, Amelia, that you were sharing on social?
Oh, I'm always having situations.
I mean, aren't we all?
I think that just comes with the territory of being a self-manager. It's a people business. It's customer service based, and I mean, yeah, that just comes with the territory. You have to be a problem solver. You have to be good with people. I mean, you don't have to be, but it definitely helps. So there's always something going on every week.
Yeah.
Well,
Zach's giving you a shout out. So go grab that book, David, if you haven't already. Where can we find the book? Is it on Amazon?
Yes, it's on Amazon. It's called The Self-Managing Landlord. You can also go to our website, womeninvestinrealestate.com/book, and you'll get a 10% off code there for the book. But yeah, it's a great little handbook that you can refer back to, especially if you've never managed a property before. This will tell you from A to Z how to do it.
Well, I wish that book was out like 15, 16 years ago, because when we bought our first property, it wasn't like we were just like, oh, cool, let's get one rental, and we had it. And I'm working, Jen's a teacher.
I was in denial, I think, until Bradley. So from 2008 until 2015, I was like, cute, like go do your thing. And then all of a sudden I had to.
And I'm just buying up these deals, and I'm like, hey, guess what? And then Jen kind of got thrown into the mix.
Kinda.
Help paying the bills, because now she's staying at home with the kids, and she's got a full-time gig being a stay-at-home mom and running the house and doing all of the things. And with two little ones, it was a lot. So we were self-managing in the beginning. And Amelia, you hit it right on the head about having like the boundaries, because like people do people things. And it's great to hope when you first meet and they seem great and we seem great, and they move in, but then they're like, hey, Grace, I'm not gonna be able to pay rent this month because I went to the casino and I was planning on winning, but I lost. So there goes the rent this month, right? And you're like, hello, that's not an option, right?
Yeah.
So having those boundaries, making sure everybody's on the same page, I think is super important. So, I think you just hit it on the head, is setting up your business for success, because it is a people business.
Treat it like a business,
but
too.
it is a business.
Yep.
It is a business. Yeah.
100%.
We're huge on that.
Yeah.
Well, any other last words of wisdom? Again, if you're interested in joining us out in Utah, I've never been, so I'm really excited to stay in a mansion with some fabulous ladies talking all about real estate and just connecting on all sorts of levels. But any other piece of wisdom you can share with our audience today? You want to maybe encourage them? I know you say take the action, but anything else you could think of that could leave everyone on a positive note here in the world of real estate investing?
We always say if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, and there wouldn't be any money to be made in real estate. So just keep that in mind the next time it seems hard, or you're exhausted, that you're doing this so you can live a life by your own design.
Yeah. And I would say find a community of people that you can talk to. Like I said, I've got shit coming up every single week that I need to vent to my ladies about, or need to vent to my community about, and just get feedback. Hey, has anyone ever experienced this? Trying to do real estate alone is really tough. So find a few people that you really resonate with and pour some time into those relationships.
Oof. Yeah, definitely a two-way road.
Well, and I think too, we see like a lot of like big companies and a lot of investors, like they're buying up real estate. So obviously they have some type of winning formula that they've understood, right? So, trying to do that on your own, like what you said, Amelia, it can be a little bit tough. So in the beginning, get around great people, learn from their wins, learn from their mistakes, but also too, the biggest thing is to take your own action, right? It's fun to watch you girls. It's fun to listen to all the stories and things like that, but it's actually about taking action. And that's what I love about you two, because there's no excuses. There's not, I'm too busy, or I live in Iowa, or
I don't feel like it.
And there's no excuses. It's just you guys putting in the work. It's getting the results. And I love watching your reels and the dances and things like that. I am I get amused by it, so I love it. And you guys have always done a great job forever.
It's
so.
the real talk. I think that's what I really resonate with. So let's cheers to keeping it real. And until next time, guys, go find Amelia and Grace. I know they're on Instagram. We've got Grace.investing. And Amelia, what's your handle?
Amelia Joe REI. I wasn't as smart. I didn't put it in my handle name, but it's just Amelia Joe REI.
That's all right. We'll drop it in the show notes. Until next time, everybody, thanks for being here. Creative Finance Playbook. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. And tune in next week. We'll have another awesome guest. So see you guys later.
See you guys.
Bye.